Hello everyone, this is Jeff at OpSource Cloud, and we're going to look at setting up NFS on cloud servers. So for our example, I have an NFS server here. It's got space. I'm going to export to our web server that we've got ready and waiting. So logging into our NFS server, we need to make sure that there are 3 services running, as well as define our exports. The services are port map, NFS lock, and NFS. Now by default, NFS is disabled, so it's a security precaution. We can enable it with the check config command. And now we'll start it up. So we got our services running. NFS will start on boot, so now we have to define our exports. And that is done with the etc exports file. Now the format is pretty simple. The first thing you have to specify is a directory, our var www.html directory for this example. The next option would be the server or servers, as followed by the group of options for those servers. Now for purposes of this example, I could easily just put in the IP address of my web server, 10.162.33.14, but looking forward, if I have multiple web servers, as I add them, I would have to keep modifying the exports file to add those IP addresses. NFS gives you the option of specifying IP addresses with net masks, so you don't have to constantly update this file. So we'll add the net mask for our network segment instead, and we'll follow that immediately by the server options. And I say immediately, you cannot have spaces in between the host portion and the server options. So we'll specify read-write, so the amount is read and write for user IDs, and I'm going to put in this explicit option called no root squash, and I'll explain what that is in a couple minutes. So we'll save the file. NFS does not reread this file constantly. Whenever you make changes to it, you have to notify the NFS service. And you can do that with the exportfs command. The -r option means re-export the exports defined in the file. So now the server portion is set up, so we'll switch to the client, our web server, and we will first verify we have nothing in our var www.html directory. This is where we're going to mount the export from the server. So we'll do that by adding an option in our FS tab. And what we'll do is specify the server, a colon, and then the export. The next option in the file is where we want to mount this. We'll mount it to var www.html. The third column is our file system type. In this case, it's NFS. Our fourth column are the mount options we want to use. In this case, I'll just go with defaults. The fifth and sixth columns are for the file system dumping and file system checks. Since this is NFS, we don't perform either of those, so we'll just say zeros. Save the file, and because we have var www.html referenced in the FS tab, we can simply specify it with our mount. And there you go. Our var www.html directory is now mounted to our NFS server. And there's the content we had available. Now going back to that no root squash option, That's a security feature of NFS. It's called squashing. And what squashing is when the client sends a request to the server to either read or write to a file, the user ID and group ID are checked against the permissions on the server. Now, squashing means you don't bother checking the permissions. You simply map that user request to an anonymous user. If the anonymous user has read access, you would be able to read the file. If it had write access, it would be able to write to the file. Otherwise, it has no access at all. Now, root is a special user on Unix systems. Root has pretty much access to do read and write to any file and directory on the system. By default, NFS will squash root when it makes requests. This is, again, for security reasons. You can get around that by specifying no root squash in your export options. And that way, root on the client would behave the same as root on the server. It would be able to read and write to any file. So that's how easy it is to set up NFS. This actually came in through as a request from one of our users. So if you've got questions, if you've got want to see certain configurations, just drop us a line and we will be happy to help you out. Go to community.opsourcecloud.net and let us know. Thanks.